Thank you very much, Mr. Secretary General. I think there are a few questions that I will bring back to you, but later on during our interactive part. Clearly, we would like to learn a little bit more, hear a little bit more from you. What are these non-tariff barriers that you have seen being brought back by the members as a result of the reduction of the flows of trade, and how you are addressing that. But we'll get back to this later. It's pretty clear, Minister Davies, what are the benefits that have accrued to the ASEAN region from their various initiatives of trade facilitation. I know that you have been engaged in a number of initiatives yourself on the continent, in South Africa. What are those initiatives? Can you tell us more about some of those initiatives? And what are the main benefits and some of the challenges that you see ahead?
Assalamu alaikum. Let me start off by saying that compared to East Asia, the African continent still has to address, I think, quite a number of issues about integration and learn from other regions. The background, I think, needs to be looked at in the context of two statistics I'm going to give you. The first is that the African continent is responsible for only 3% of global trade, and this notwithstanding the fact that we actually produce quite a sizable proportion of the mineral products which have fueled industrial development in Asia. We are also responsible for only 1% of world manufacturing. Now, I think that if you look at what a number of African leaders are saying, is that although Africa has emerged as the next growth frontier after Asia, with average growth rates over 5% this year, and although there is a growing interest in the African continent, our pattern of development has got to change quite significantly in the next decade or so. We cannot position ourselves any longer simply as producers and exporters of primary products. We've got to move up the value chain and produce more value-added products. And the regional market, I think, as the lesson of other regions is telling us, is that the regional market is very, very important in terms of achieving that. Now, if the level of intra-regional trade in ASEAN is 25%, in Africa it is about 10 to 11%. It's much less. And the fact of the matter is that we need to make some very significant advances, both in regional integration and also in the development of our productive capacities. Now, I think Dr. Supachai told us this morning the view of UNCTAD, which is very much the view that we share, that the objective at this stage of African regional integration needs to be broadening integration across our established regional communities. The unfortunate legacy of colonialism was that colonialism divided us into 54 countries, each of which has got very small regional markets and populations. But when we start to reach across our frontiers, and particularly across our established regional communities, we start to hit the numbers that make regional integration a potential contributor to economic diversification. So, for example, the one project which is on the cards and which is moving is the establishment of a free trade area between the Southern African Development Community, the East African Community, and the Common Market of Eastern and Southern Africa. And that will combine 26 countries on the east coast of Africa with a combined population of 600 to 700 million people and a combined GDP of $1 trillion. The African Union has indicated that that should be followed with a continental FTA, which would bring in the rest of Africa with a combined GDP this time of $2.6 trillion and a combined population of well over 1 billion people. So that is giving us the scale that we need to be able to operate to diversify and build intra-regional trade. But when we look at intra-regional trade, the issues are not, and I think this is the purpose of this panel discussion, are not only or even fundamentally matters of tariffs. There are tariffs in place, and a free trade agreement would negotiate tariff matters, particularly across the regional communities, because within the regional communities we already have some form of FTA, or in some cases moving beyond FTA. The broader picture is encompassed in what we argue as South Africa, and I think this is also the principle that underpins the tripartite SADC East African community, is we need to support an approach called developmental integration. That must combine whatever trade integration we promote with the development of supply capacity, the capacity to trade and based on economic diversification, and then also address both the hard and the soft infrastructure issues which impede intra-regional trade. And so, for example, we have quite ambitious projects of infrastructure development, because the infrastructure on the African continent was largely constructed to take primary products to the port, and then from the port out of the continent. They were not the infrastructure was not constructed to join up our economies one to another. And I think that when ITC has given us some very interesting figures, they tell us that if there is a 50% reduction in the time to cross borders, that will yield benefits of $15 billion. And that if we combine that with infrastructure development, that will add another $20 billion US. Let me say, I think those are interesting calculations, but in practice we don't find that there is a hard distinction between hard and soft infrastructure. For example, one of the successes of the North-South Corridor program that is part of the tripartite SADC East African community, it's 80-odd infrastructure development projects, roughly from Central Africa through to the port of Durban. One of the successes that has been achieved in that has been a reduction of the time to cross the Chirundu border between Zimbabwe and Zambia from several days to a few hours. And this achievement was a combination of investing in the hard infrastructure to construct single border posts and things of that sort, as well as the process matters and or the rules and regulations. The other, which is more directly linked to ourselves, is the Beitbridge border post. And here, if we want to reduce the time to cross the Beitbridge border post, among other things, we've got to address the fact that the existing road transit across is only one way at a single time. So I think that in practice, we think that the link between the two is the fundamental challenge that we have, and that both of them together can yield significant results. I know the facilitator told us we should be free to use our time. I don't know whether the mic is actually telling me that my time is up, but let me end at this point and hand over.